Hey everybody, Chef Trevor here, Chef de Partie of Benchmark Restaurant at the Canadian Food and Wine Institute, and today I'm going to make you an appetizer star. We're going to put together a delicious taco tomato in less than 15 minutes. So let's get started cooking with Trevor. What I have today in front of me is all your classic taco ingredients, okay? I've got my iceberg lettuce. I've got some beautiful field tomatoes that I picked up this morning from the grocery store. When you're looking at tomatoes, you're looking for there to be no bruises on the outside. This green here should fall off really easily. It should come right away. And when we're looking at the tomato, we're examining. We don't want any bruising or soft spots anywhere because the tomato is going to be the star of this dish today. Okay, so we want it to be super juicy, squeeze all over your cheek, and get really delicious. Okay, so when we're picking our tomatoes out, make sure we're taking the time to pick the best one. I'm just going to take those other green bits off our tomato before we move on. Now, for our tacos today, we're going to use ground beef. And I've mixed 1 packet of taco seasoning over it to saute it. And all we're going to do now is add 1 chopped white onion to it, sauteed, okay? And to do that, we need to go to our trusty extra virgin olive oil and a beautiful non-stick stainless steel frying pan, okay? We're going to put that over a medium-high heat. We're going to add 1 tablespoon of oil to that pan. Now, like I've been saying to you all the time, the trick to getting things to fry properly in your frying pan is give it the time to heat up. We never, ever, ever want to add anything to a cold frying pan. So we're just going to wait for that medium-high heat to kind of let that olive oil get glossy and shiny. Okay, it should become a bit thinner and it should start to pull towards the middle of the pan as it gets hotter. Now, I know a lot of people out there say, oh, you shouldn't cook with olive oil. It's got such a low smoke point and it's going to burn. The reality of the situation is you can cook with olive oil. You just can't sear with olive oil, okay? So what that means is if we're ever doing something in a pan where we want to get a crispy skin on a piece of chicken, we wouldn't use olive oil. But today, because we're only sauteing onion, it is completely fine to use olive oil. Our oil is nice and hot, and we'll know when we put our onions in the pan and we hear that classic sizzle. That's what we're looking for when we're sauteing. Nothing fancy here, we just want to get it nice and caramelized. Much like every time you've seen me saute onions, we are looking for them to go translucent and start to change color. What we don't want to do is cook them on such a high heat that they start to burn on the outside. That's going to add a bitter flavor that we don't want. Just to help those onions along, I'm going to add just a pinch or about a half a teaspoon of salt and just a pinch or about a half a teaspoon of pepper. And that's going to start to draw out the moisture in the onions and help them cook a little bit faster. You'll see they're starting to go see-through if I hold them on my spoon. And once we get to that point with our onions, it's time to add our ground beef. In we go. And we just want to incorporate that. We just want to warm this through because remember, we've added the taco seasoning, we've followed the directions, and we just have this beautiful leftover taco meat that we just don't know what to do with. So we're just warming that up in the pan. Touch more salt and a touch more pepper. And we're just gonna turn that down to a super low, minimal heat while we work with our tomatoes. One other trick to tomatoes, a lot of times what we do is we get the tomato, we get this beautiful, full, delicious looking tomato, and then first thing we do, because we think we don't need to eat this part, is we chop the whole top off. What I want to show you today is a little chef's secret to get the most out of your tomato, and that is to insert your knife just around what we call the core of the tomato, and nice and steadily making a circle all the way around until all you're wasting of that tomato is that bitter, hard to eat core. That's the only piece of your tomato you should ever be throwing away. Any more of that and you're wasting money. So we're just gonna do that with all 4 of our tomatoes. the next thing we have to do is prepare our tomatoes so that they can be filled with all of our taco seasoning, okay? So all we want to do is make cuts almost all the way through the tomato, okay? We don't want to go all the way through here because what we want is it to fan open, okay? And we're just going to do that like we're cutting a pie into 8 beautiful sections. And we're just going to kind of fan it out like that. And you'll see taking out that core and fanning it almost all the way through has given us a perfect vessel to stuff all that delicious meat into the middle. So on the plate it goes. And another tip that a chef will always tell you is it's very important when chopping tomatoes to have a super sharp knife. If you don't have a super sharp knife at home with you, the next best substitute is to use a serrated knife. And the serrated edge will actually cut through the hard to do skin on a tomato that sometimes a dull knife will squish or push down on. Because what we want here is to keep the tomato nice and intact so that it can hold up to all the stuff we're going to put in the middle. Once our tomatoes are on our plate, we just want to simply give them a nice season with salt and pepper in the middle here. Just going to start to draw out some of the moisture of that tomato, start to make it really juicy so that when you bite into it, it's going to be messy and your guests are going to get all over them and you're going to have a good laugh about it. And we just want to do some pepper as well at the same time, just enough to start drawing out the moisture in that tomato. So our meat's gotten perfectly browned, our onions have gone nicely translucent, that taco seasoning is smelling fantastic. And all we're gonna do is just put that meat right into the middle of our tomatoes. Now, it doesn't matter if we get messy at this point, because what we're looking for here is something that our guests are gonna pull apart and they're gonna eat all at once as one big mess. This should literally last less than 5 minutes on your dinner table when you put it out for your guests. We just wanna get that meat and push it right inside. Don't worry if a little bit spills over. We're not perfect, nature's not perfect. But what's actually going to happen as we add that nice warm meat to the tomatoes is it's actually going to start to briefly cook them so they're even going to get more tender and get beautifully tasty when we bring them to the table. And then we need to use iceberg lettuce. Now, iceberg lettuce, everyone's like, oh great, iceberg lettuce, it just tastes like water. But the reality is, in tacos, we're after the super delicious crunch of this lettuce. And it's really, really easy to shred. A lot of people kind of cut it off on the side, they only use one little bit, then the rest goes brown in their fridge. But the best thing I can say to do on how to cut iceberg lettuce is actually the funnest thing to do. Because you just have to hit it on the cutting board, flip it over, and the core comes right out. And then all we have to do to shred that lettuce, cut it into 4. We need only 1/4 of the lettuce today for our dish. To preserve the other quarters, all you need to do is put them in an airtight container and use them within 5 days, okay? So the other parts of your lettuce can then become a beautiful salad for you for lunch tomorrow, maybe with some of your leftover taco tomatoes, if there's any left over. And then all we want to do is, now that we're in that quarter world, is we just want to take our knife, super sharp knife again, and just shred down. As thin as we can go. If yours is a little thicker than mine, that's not a big deal, because as you practice and as you make taco tomatoes over and over again, the shred on your lettuce will get finer and finer. But like I always say, there's no race. We're just looking for it to be even. We're just gonna then take that shredded lettuce and sprinkle it right on top. Then I've got a beautiful no dairy sour cream product here that we're just gonna put on top of each tomato. And then I have a blend of Daiya non-dairy cheddar and mozzarella cheese that I'm just going to finish off and sprinkle on top. And there you have it. An appetizer for 15 made in less than 10 minutes. Taco tomatoes. Enjoy!